دکتر مراد نجفی بفرمایید.
متشکرم. دوستان سلام. با عرض پوزش یک کسی صدای من گرفته.
اگه محبت کنید توفیق اشاره کنید.
بله. اولین پوزش از اینکه صدای من گرفته برای اینکه دارم سفازی که سرما خورده بودم. دومین پوزشی که کاوه شهروز که چهره آشنایی هست برای جامعه ایرانی اینجا نتونست متاسفانه باشه، ولی خب جامعه ایرانی و سلامت ICC خیلی براش مهم هست و یک نامه درست کرده که من از طرف اون نامه برای شما میخونم. به غیر از نامه یک پاورپوینت پرزنتیشن هم هستش که من چندین کپی از این برای شما آوردم که اگر که علاقه داشته باشین میتونید سرکولیت کنید که شما بخونید. و من شروع کنم. این نامه به زبان انگلیسی هست و امیدوارم که دوستان دنبال بکنن.
هم فرصت
I want to thank the Board of Directors of the ICC for holding this constructive session. Before delving into the heart of my presentation, I want to note two introductory matters. The first concern is that how I arrived at these suggestions. I was the Vice President and spokesperson of the organization from April 12, 2012 to May 2013. I took the role seriously and worked very hard and devoted many hours into an attempt to reform and professionalize ICC. However, by 2013, it became apparent to me that due to significant structural and personnel problems with the organization, I could not achieve that goal. As such, I resigned my post. The views I express today, therefore, are not theoretical. They are based on my specific challenges that I faced during that period. The second point of concern is the nature of these recommendations. Many controversy has surrounded the ICC in the recent months regarding its president, its committees, its transparency, and its partnership. I express no views on those issues because I believe that these controversies are symptoms. We must treat the underlying disease. Rather than focusing on the controversy of the day, I want to deal with what I believe are foundational problems of the organization. So these are the problems. One, the ICC and domestic Iranian issues. Problem, members of our community have the talent and professional skills required to build a top-notch organization representing our interests. The primary problem is that we cannot agree on what our interests are. Nowhere is this difference more problematic than the question of whether the ICC should take a position with regards to a political issue in Iran. This arises most frequently when the Iranian government has violated human rights and some group within the community is asking the ICC to take action. At one extreme, there are those who argue that ICC has absolutely no mandate to address anything that has to do with matters of Iran. This group believes that if an issue directly affects Iranian Canadians, then it is within the ICC's mandate. If it does not, then it is outside the scope of the ICC and that the organization should not engage. This group cites the bylaws and notes that nothing specifically gives the ICC the right to give opinion about matters inside Iran. On the other extreme are those who believe that promoting democracy and human rights in Iran is a central interest of all Iranians, including those who live in Canada, and therefore the latter camp is of the view that the ICC should be regularly engaged in discussions about the Iranian politics, specifically those that affect human rights. This leads to endless fighting, as we've seen today. One group accuses the other of politicizing the ICC. The other group responds by saying the opponents are the stooges of the Iranian government. This vicious cycle of insults and incrimination continues, and until this issue is resolved, the ICC cannot function as a healthy organization. It appears that we must strike a middle ground by getting down the categories and criteria for whether and when the ICC would enter any debate on Iran. These categories should be acceptable to reasonable and mainstream stakeholders within the Iranian community. To find this middle ground, I think we need to begin by acknowledging 2 points. One is that supporting human rights in Iran is an acknowledged interest of the vast majority of the Iranian Canadians. The absence of democracy and human rights in Iran is why so many of us live in Canada to begin with. Staying completely silent in the face of civil rights violation in Iran would make the ICC... Human rights violations in Iran are so commonplace and the ICC is so limited in its resources that if the institution devoted its time to putting out a statement every time someone's rights were violated in Iran, then the institution will have no time to do anything else. And here are Kaveh's recommendations. 1. The ICC should always act when Iranian Canadians are directly affected, such as the case of Zahra Kazemi and Saeed Malikpour. 2. The ICC should have a general macro-level position with respect to human rights situations in Iran. And 3. The ICC should otherwise only speak out when extraordinary situations compel collective action. And that example is the 2009 mass uprising around the time of the election. Suggestion 2 is that ICC it should only keep its issues relevant to those that affect the vast majority of the Iranians and therefore not transform the institution into a political one. And the last issue is that naturally there will be a debate on what defines extraordinary measures, and that must rely simply on the reasonable person task. The violations would need to be unusual in scope or type to qualify. Ultimately, discretion and latitude should be given to the board of directors to decide on these matters. Thank you.
Thank you.